I'm at the Trump rally and somebody just started shooting. What just happened?
Boy, you captured the emotion in events like this from eyewitnesses, and we've been doing it throughout our coverage, NewsNation. Welcome back to New York City. I'm Connell McShane as our coverage continues. Top of the hour, current president of the United States, Joe Biden, is set to speak, and so we will certainly carry that live. As we wait for that, I want to welcome in a guest with a very, very interesting perspective on all of this. Daniel Hernandez joins us. He was just an intern when he actually helped to save the life of Congresswoman Gabby Giffords years ago. We all remember that incident when she was shot, meeting with her constituents in the parking lot of a supermarket. It was back in 2011 in Arizona. Welcome, Daniel. There's a look at the former Congresswoman. So you could take us back to that day, but also just maybe start by telling us what went through your mind yesterday when you saw what happened at the former president's rally.
Thank you so much for having me on. I think it's been 13 years since the shooting in Tucson happened, but seeing the footage of what was happening with former President Donald Trump immediately took me back to January 8th of 2011. I could remember the smell of the gun smoke, the chaos. And I think looking at the video of the people behind it, that is what happens in a shooting. There's a lot of chaos. A lot of things are happening. It's very fluid. So it's something that's really triggering for those of us who are survivors of gun violence, but also political violence events like the ones that we saw here. And I think what we're seeing is the result of two uniquely American problems. The first is a very, very heated political rhetoric, where instead of focusing on ideas and going after ideas and policies, we're going after each other as people. And it's not enough to just win. You have to destroy the other side. And I think this ratcheting up of the political temperature has really driven the violence that we're seeing, whether it was Governor Whitmer being, potentially kidnapped in Michigan, or whether it was the shooting of the congressional baseball game a few years after Gabby's shooting. We're seeing this ratcheting up and destroying the other side. And the other is the easy accessibility of firearms. One of the things that I think is not being talked enough about is this is a uniquely American problem. Gun violence continues to be a problem in America. And it wasn't just a failure of the Secret Service part. It was the fact that in Pennsylvania, a 20-year-old cannot rent a car, but was able to buy an AR-15 and shoot at a former president.
Yeah, in this case, we believe his father bought the gun. But your point about the rhetoric is not only well taken, but it reminds us that we have been here before. Have we seen this exact incident before? No, but we've had almost identical conversations to the one that we're having today when Congresswoman Giffords was shot, when those other incidents took place. We talked then about rhetoric being too heated, about how we needed to dial things back and be more responsible with our words. And now, yet here we are again today, right? Now, not only that, do I want to talk to you about that, but I also want to talk to you about the practical nature of what happens in incidents like this. We literally, none of us know what we're going to do in a situation, right, until we're in it. And we might think we would act quickly if there's a shooting in a building where we are, or whatever the case may be. But we don't know. And some people freeze up naturally. There's no judgment on them. Some people panic. Some people scream. Right. Some people take action. You did, right? I'm sure you don't necessarily want to toot your own horn about that, but you took action. And people yesterday, not only Secret Service agents, but there were some physicians in the stands. People took action, right, and tried to help.
And that's, I think, the thing that we never really know until it happens. I unfortunately have had to be a first responder more than once. There was a stabbing at a local Tucson bar where somebody who was with me was an Air Force medic, froze up, completely in shock. I then had to say, okay, how do we make sure that this person gets what they need? On the phone with 911, trying to do an assessment. You never know what's going to happen until it happens.
What went through your head in those situations? I mean, did you just almost have a sense of calm and just everything went out? What was going through your head in the Gifford situation and in that situation?
I think for me, the very first thing was it reminded me of what I knew had happened in the months prior to the election in 2010. Gabby Giffords had had several death threats. Somebody had shut out the door of her congressional office. And we'd even had somebody who had shot an effigy of her as a fundraiser who was running against her in 2010. So when I heard the first pop, it was, okay, if there is a shooting, Gabby's going to be the target, and anybody who's near her will potentially be a target as well. So that was my first thought. My second thought was, I have very limited medical training, but it's probably more than the people around me. I need to get to the people that were injured first. So I immediately dropped what I was doing and ran to the front of the line to try and provide first aid for Gabby. And by the time I got there, I saw that there were several people who'd been injured, including the gentleman who was my boss, Gabe Zimmerman, only 30 years old, who'd already died by the time I got there. And it was only seconds from me running, 30 or 40 feet from the back of the line to the front. So you never know what's going to happen,
right.
But I think for me, it was important to try and help out as much as I could. Until
and you did, right? What did you do when you provided first aid, help for multiple people on the scene then? Remind us if you can.
Yeah, so when I first got there, saw that Gabe Zimmerman had already passed away and there was nothing I could do. The next person was Congressman Ron Barber, who took over after Gabby, who had been shot twice. And I saw him and he had a blood coming out of his thigh, and he said, don't help me, go help Gabby. And there was another person who was standing in the entrance of the grocery store who I said, just hold pressure here. And that's when I went to Gabby and saw that she had keeled over, immediately tried to see how many gunshots she had, just the one, started applying pressure to her head wound and trying to keep her head upright and talking to her and keeping her engaged for about 9 minutes while we were waiting for the EMTs to come in, because in these situations, there's so much chaos that they didn't want to send first responders in until they knew that the scene was cleared and that there wasn't a second shooter. And I think that's one of the things that we were seeing yesterday in Bethel Park. There was so much chaos and there wasn't a certainty of, was there one shooter? Was there multiple shooters? Is the inside the perimeter or the outside the perimeter?
And you have a former president in that situation who, the Secret Service is responsible for. And once this happened, they're rushing him out. And again, I don't think there would have been anything they could have done, unfortunately, for this gentleman who was killed in the shooting. He probably died, from what the reports we have, instantly. But I was amazed to hear about, in that situation, a physician and some others who acted so quickly, and in your situation, how you did the same years ago. You were a hero then, and we appreciate your reflections now. Thank you, Daniel, for coming on. Appreciate it very much.
Thanks so much for having me.